Hey there, it's Kim Gould from Love Your Design here. It's January 2025. Happy New Year. Uranus is doing some really interesting things at the moment. It's been in since 2020 the central individual channel, and it's about to move into gate 20, still in the individual circuitry, but with a very different influence. I wanted to share with you some insights into what Uranus is doing in gate 23, which is where it is now, and to show you where it's going to go over the next few months. And the reason I want to do this now is because on the 23rd of January, we have a bit of a kind of an activation with Mercury and Mars involved with Uranus. And it's going to be a really interesting day where we have a bit of a kind of opening up of a portal to our individuality. So let's go have a look at Uranus in gate 23. The imagery in the hexagram is a mountain. It's solid and enduring, but it's in decline. It's crumbling back to earth. So the general sense here is discovering something that we expected would last forever. We thought it was permanent, but we're discovering that it's going to actually fall away. It's splitting off. It's being stripped out of our lives. It's not, after all, a permanent thing. And we're going to have to release our grip on something that we've treasured almost, something that's been important to us. But in doing so, we gain something more. Now, remember, while we're talking about this, Pluto is about to move into gate 41, which kind of has a similar idea that in order to have a richer inner life where we can live with true clarity, we have to let go of things that are getting in the way of that. So we have a kind of similar idea with Pluto in the 41. So Uranus in the 23, releasing our grip on something that we might have treasured, something we thought was permanent. But in doing so, we are going to gain something more. And to really understand this gate, I think we've got to look at the actual hexagram itself. Gate 23, you can see the bottom 5 lines are the broken yin lines. And that one top line is the unbroken yang line. So the yin lines are the feminine energy. One more push by the yin, the feminine, and the revolution is complete. That last yang line is kind of holding on for dear life. There's a sense of certainty, solidity in the yang, and the yin tends to hold the possibilities for things. So we've got new potential pushing out that last bit of certainty. The last gasp, in my opinion, of an insanely unbalanced culture that fetishizes certainty, top-down truth, but also the kind of hero idea of individuality that ignores and even vilifies the kinds of connections that we all need to survive, and which is very strongly found within those yin hexagrams. To take time out to see the connections and what they tell us about what's going on. What's it afraid of, that yang line, as the potential for change is pushing through? Well, if the yin lines manage to break through, we get this. This is the feminine polarity, the dark, fecund void of creation that draws in the masculine polarity so that its active principle can operate from lived reality rather than abstract fantasy. Now, the full moon on the 13th of January, coming up in a few days after I record this, is all about the way in which we need to start to connect with reality and let go of a whole lot of anxious old habitual stories about that are too small for us now, and trying to hold on to them is what's creating the anxiety. So we have this potential for the receptive energy coming. The receptive energy is a calm space that's patient, and it holds the space for everything that's coming into being. So gate 23 is part of the individual circuitry. It's a throat gate right here. And its voice is, I know. Well, at least that's what it says when the mutative pulse is moving outwards. And we all like that part of the process, right? We all like it when we can say, I know, I'm clear about this. But what about when the pulse shifts to an inner mutation? So if you don't know, this central channel operates on a mutative pulse. Sometimes there's an inner mutation, which means that you don't have clarity about things. You don't feel like you know things clearly. And that's a time when the mutation is happening inside of you. And then we have the outer mutation. And that's a time when you do feel clear that you do know what's going on, and you're drawn out into the world at that time. I'll put some articles underneath this video so you can go and read more about that. But what happens when all we have is I don't know, when we've exhausted all our ideas and we have to pause and reflect and maybe even develop some wisdom? If we push on beyond this point where we are in the inner mutation and we don't know, if we keep pushing on blindly beyond that point, what's guiding us? And that's how we've all been living. We don't get to stop and reflect. We don't get to take time out. We don't get to spend time considering what might be coming into form, what might be coming into knowing. With Uranus in gate 23, the things that we've relied upon to make sense of our lives are all used up. All our assumptions seem worn out and useless. We've literally exhausted our individual mutative potential. And it's time to rest, recuperate, find where this is all going. And the problem with that is we've been conditioned to believe that we are only safe when we keep on moving. If we rest, the dark void will find us, will seek us out and find us, and all will be lost. Or at least that's how the story goes. I love this quote from Ursula Le Guin. All times are changing times, but ours is one of massive, rapid moral and mental transformation. Archetypes turn into millstones, large simplicities get complicated, chaos becomes elegant, and what everyone knows is true turns out to be what some people used to think. This is where we are. What everyone used to think was true isn't true anymore, and we have to find a new way of knowing what's true. Yin is not inactive. The feminine is not inactive. Resting is not doing nothing. This is a process of reconnecting with Source and doing it in our own unique way. Uranus, the planet of individuality, is sitting in the individual circuitry and has been there since 2020. We are in a mutative process of reconnecting with Source and learning how to do it in our own unique way. This is a time of learning how to really know, to really get to understand what knowing feels like, and not just to know what we've learned or to know what we've been told. This is a time of knowing what action to take and when, because we can feel our part in the matrix of universal consciousness, and that requires us to embrace our inner mutation. Typhon and Lempo have been in that channel, the 2343 channel of structuring, for almost the entire time that Uranus has been there. Now, our culture is largely based on the ancient Greek and Roman civilizations. A lot of people might be surprised by that, but in fact, the building blocks of our culture come from ancient Greece and Rome. And both of those civilizations demonize the feminine, the dark, the void, the germinating. I mean, they literally turned those aspects of humanity into demons. We have all taken these ancient cultural influences in, allowing them to shape our sense of what it means to be human. And this is not about discrimination or injustice. It goes so much deeper than that, into our beliefs about life itself. So for almost the entire time that Uranus has been in gate 23, so just over 12 months now, Typhon has been in gate 43 and Lempo in gate 23. And these planets are both about recovering from our fear of the dark, and in particular, its creative and sexual power. We meet with those energies in that dark space where we find ourselves alone with our own thoughts and feelings, where we are grasping for the truth, where we're looking for something that we can rely on. And we're taught that this apparently unknowing place, where we might be daydreaming, where we might be meditating, where we might be just lounging around relaxing, where we might be walking in nature, we've been taught that this unknowing place is lazy, selfish, even shameful, but it's none of those things. It's a place where we can reconnect with the power of that creative energy. Typhon reminds us that these spaces are not hell, but our personal birthing spaces where we connect with our own inner knowing, germinate our own inner truth, and prepare to collaborate with natural co-creative allies. Gate 23 is not an easy energy. It's the gate of splitting apart. It's the gate of things that are no longer alive in your life being stripped away. Hilary Barrett in her I Ching says, the more that you hold on, the harder this will get. Bradford Harcher says in his I Ching, the wise will learn to minimize what they hoard. Redistribution will happen, but this can be voluntary and sent to where it does the most good. The best wealth to carry also weighs the least. This applies to you personally as well as collectively, but personally what this means is, what are you holding on to? What can you let go of? How is holding on to those things actually standing in the way of your good and the greater good of everyone else as well? When he talks about the best wealth to carry also weighs the least, he's talking about soul, the wealth of our soul, the wealth of living a life where we're connected with the divine in the flow. When something is unsustainable, gravity will give an assist, right? That's the mountain crumbling, something that we thought was permanent, but gravity is now breaking it down. Lasting perfection, nothing lasts forever, right? Lasting perfection is no more important to nature than decay and death. But it's only a bad situation for things as they are now. So you don't have to worry about what's happening here. Good things are going to come. It's good for things as they will be in the future. In other words, we're in a process of losing things now so that we can have better things in the future, and we should be moving in that direction. One of the big things that's happening at the moment is this sense of being almost overwhelmed by the backlash to the rapid change that's been made in the last few decades, since the 60s in particular. The process of transition that we're in at the moment is about taking tiny, tiny, tiny steps forward, but never losing our hope and direction for creating the world in the way that we imagine it to be. I like this quite gentle take from Carol Anthony's I Ching on Gate 23. We think we must arm ourselves against a situation that will be embarrassing or perhaps lead to difficulties, right? Why do we fear change? Because we think there's going to be difficulties come about from it. We're afraid to allow matters to take their own course and think we have to influence the situation through some kind of action or plan. To take preventative action is actually splitting yourself apart. What you need to do is go with the flow, because that allows the creative to do its work. I really love what Hilary Barrett says about Gate 17. Going with the flow is never a mistake. I like that. A quick note on chaos. This is a time of chaos. This is a time when people around the world who are in power are using chaos as a tool to maintain power. But chaos has a really bad rap in our culture. If you do an image search for chaos, you get something that might perhaps be called disorder. To think of chaos as a loss of control or a kind of disorder is a telling indictment of our cultural fear of reality, because chaos is the basis from which everything arises. Chaos is basically what we draw from every time we create something. So what happens if people find out who we are when we lose control? That's our fear. But also, what happens if we are able to tap into that place where change happens, where manifestation comes from, where our creative power finds germination? What happens then? And Uranus's time in the gate of splitting apart is a chaotic event. Uranus can be chaotic anyway. But in Gate 23, it reacquaints us with the true nature of chaos. It says, what you don't need anymore, we're going to take away, and then we're going to sit with these apparently chaotic pieces and see what germinates from them. You know, it works very much with Gate 3, that gate of difficulty at the beginning, which is the quintessential gate of creating out of chaos. Uranus in Gate 23 rescues us from the insanity of trying to make life outside of any true relationship with reality. This is an experiment in who we become as individuals when we drop into the bedrock of our potential and live from that place, letting go of what's no longer relevant, what's no longer alive for us, and only taking action when it feels correct to do so. By the time Uranus leaves gate 23 in March 2025, Pluto will have shifted to gate 41. Now, there's obviously a lot to say about this, but for now, only one thing I want to say. We have to know what is no longer alive and growing, and we have to learn the difference between natural decay and killing. Now, this is a deep and I suppose in a way dark point, but natural decay is a part of life. It's a very different thing to deliberate killing, which seeks to ultimately destroy something. When we allow natural decay to happen in our life, when we allow gravity to take hold and reduce the things that we used to treasure so that we have room for something new to come along, that's a natural process. And unfortunately in our culture, some people do seek to destroy in an unnatural way. And we're right to fear that. But what we need to come back to is this natural, organic sense of things rising and falling, things growing and dying off. So from now until 2044, Pluto is in the Aquarian human design gates, mostly around the solar plexus center. Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius is ruled by Uranus. So there is a relationship between now and 2044 between Pluto and Uranus. And this time is going to shift our understanding of what it means to be a conscious human connected to higher mind. And understanding how we take our place within the collective to use our unique gifts for the greater good. And these are the skills for our time. So the date that I was talking about was the 23rd of January 2025. So a couple of weeks away from when I'm recording this. And on that day, we have Mars, which is in, 62, which is here. And sitting opposite or in the complementary gate for Mercury, which is in the 61-3, which is up here in the head center. And they are both making an aspect, an astrological aspect that we can't see in the human design chart, but is nonetheless active, to Uranus. We've got Mars and Mercury together. When we get those two together, we're becoming more conscious of how we act on our desires. Mercury brings conscious awareness. Mars is acting on our desires. Mars in gate 62, line 3, tells us that small transitions are better than trying to repel reality. Right? We're doing things at the moment in very, very tiny steps. If we try to stick to what we know, what's comfortable, rather than allowing things to change, then we start to have problems. But if we move very carefully and very slowly, we can move through even very difficult and dangerous times. Mercury in gate 61, line 2, is the gate of inner truth. And it's how we can use our own truth as a guide for who are our true allies. If someone recognizes your truth, they are a true creative ally for you. They are someone that you can work with going forward. When we bring Uranus into relationship with Mars, we've got a sextile, Mars sextile Uranus. A sextile is an enlivening aspect. It gets things moving. So Uranus represents unexpected events that activate our unique genius and how we connect to the greater collective. I love this aspect of Uranus. It's like there's something deeply individual about Uranus, but all Uranus really wants is to take that individuality and connect with other people and do something fantastic together with it. So there's no compromise. There's no giving up aspects of yourself. It's like your true self connecting with other people who are also being their true selves. That's Uranus's kind of greatest desire, greatest dream. So Uranus is in gate 23, line 5, which is here. And actually on that day, what have we got? I just happened to have pulled the chart up when the moon's in 43, which is kind of interesting given these other activating transits to Uranus. So we've got gate 23, line 5, beginning to see what's emerging after things are stripped away. So a lot of the stripping away is already done. We're in line 5. It's a start here. We don't really know what we've got. It feels almost as if we've got nothing. Maybe just feels like compost or just a seed or a rotting piece of fruit. In the imagery of the I Ching, we're sitting under a tree and we've got the fruit is being stripped away from the tree. So it might feel like a rotten piece of fruit, right? But inside is the seed starting to germinate. And that start comes not from our own individual efforts, but from understanding our own truth and how we are able to use that as a guide for who are our people, right? It comes from our connections with others. The germination happens almost like a portal opening new dimensions because we're able to connect with other people. On the let's see, just come back here for a minute. 30th of January, we've got Uranus. It's still retrograde, but it goes direct at the end of this month, 30th of January. It's still in the 23.5. On the 26th of March, it's going to go into Gate 8. Now, it's been in Gate 8 for a while before it popped back into the 23. They tend to jump around at the end of their time in a gate. So it's going to go back to 8 for a little bit and then on finally to Gate 20. So when it's in Gate 8, it's about building a new world from relationships. We connect with those who are going in the same direction as we are. This is so much about starting to recognize who are the people who light you up, who open you up to greater potential. This is what Uranus is helping us with at the moment. And this is why letting go of all the old stories that kept us trapped in old ancestral wounding, that's pretty much done. Certainly by 2026, we'll be well and truly through all of the healing of the ancestral wounding. And then on the 11th of July, big event, ta-ra, Uranus moves out of this central circuitry where it's been since 2020, and it's going to move over here to Gate 20. Into Gate 20, which I'll do more on that for you, but this is the expression gate. It's at the throat, so it's the expression gate for the whole integration circuit, which is here, which is about self-empowerment of our individuality. So that shifts the focus for the last 5 years of Uranus activation energy to a whole other sphere. So we'll look at that another time. So keep in mind, we're overthrowing the last bit of rigidity that prevents us being open to what is coming. It's the end of a cycle and change is on its way. See you soon. Bye.